Uh,
Okay.
got David Zoia here, freelance auto analyst out of the Metro Detroit area. And David, we're just kind of looking at the EV infrastructure situation here, and I know a lot of stuff is in flux with the way things have developed since the change in administration from the Biden White House to the Trump White House. I have confirmed with MDOT that several of the projects that they had going on in terms of building out um, charging stations does continue because that money was already delivered. The question for them will be, what is the new guidance going to be? As you look at that situation, how big of an impact do you think it would be if if the Trump team says we're going to end this funding, you're not going to get any more? What would that mean to the state in terms of continuing this infrastructure build out for EVs?
Yeah, I think it would be critical. I mean, the EV market, there's three things that kind of thwart the EV market today. One is the price of EVs. They're high compared to ICE vehicles. The other thing people were concerned about, of course, was battery range. That's sort of getting solved. The ranges on EVs are coming up to pretty respectable levels. And the third thing is that infrastructure, that public charging infrastructure. So any kind of, I mean, what they had committed to so far was the beginning of building, a robust infrastructure in the state and nationwide, really. And so even if the current projects go through, it's really just the beginning, and it's probably not enough in essence to continue to fuel demand in battery electric vehicles. So you want to see that kind of investment continue if we're going to get to where people think the battery electric vehicle is going in terms of the industry.
There are a few things that have been developing. I know that certainly seeing more electric vehicles on the road as time goes on. I spoke with the lieutenant governor. He said, more people bought EVs last year than the year before that, and he feels like more people will again buy more next year as compared to this year. Who do you think has more anxiety right now over EVs? Is it the consumer? Is it the auto companies as the administrations go back and forth over priorities for this? Is it, states like Michigan who are trying to invest in this change, but they don't know which way to go? Who do you think has more anxiety over all this right now?
Yeah, it's really all three because in all three cases, it's about investment, right? As a consumer, you're investing in what's a pretty expensive product right now, in an automobile. The auto companies investing in that, building those vehicles and the infrastructure needed to do that in terms of raw material supplies and battery supplies and things like that. And then, you have these public projects around public infrastructure. So it's really kind of a three-headed beast in terms of everybody making an investment. And I think to date, to some extent, the electric vehicle market is still very policy driven. I mean, we have incentives on them for consumers that's partially driving demand. So when these incentives come off at the end of September, we'll start to see what is really the true demand for electric vehicles in this country. You have the policy around building the infrastructure. So, we're not to the point yet in this market where it's a really consumer driven market. It's very much still uh, pumped up by policy. And if you pull those policies away, now we'll start to see what is that true demand. And I think that's part of what's making the industry nervous, in the US is how do I continue to invest in new product? Do I continue to try and build manufacturing around batteries and things like that and cultivate the supply base? So those are huge investments. And without some kind of sure path that this market is going to develop, that's a tough investment to make. And I think again, the consumer sort of feels that as well as, how much do I want to pay for an electric vehicle? Am I going to be able publicly charge it if I take it on the road somewhere. So those are the equations that everybody's kind of struggling with. And I think without a clear policy and a stable policy, when you have things jumping back and forth, that just creates havoc in the industry. And for automakers who are looking to compete globally, we see the electric vehicle market much healthier outside the U.S. and China in particular is cultivating a huge electric vehicle market and many automakers building electric vehicles and doing quite well. I don't know if you saw the Ford CEO recently saying that the Chinese are building the best electric vehicles in the world. So from a global standpoint, the U.S. automakers have to catch up and keep pace. And if they're not being supported on a policy basis in their home market, that kind of gets the eye off the ball a little bit and really kind of threatens if electric vehicles are the future of the industry globally, it kind of threatens their future, I think, as well.
For the big three here, our domestic automakers, it at least on the surface would appear that GM has the most to lose right now because they have really, with what they've been trying to do with Cadillac and the fact that they've got more of their models electrified than the other two at this point. Um, is Mary Barra pulling her hair out right now?
Yeah, I think, they all are to some extent, but yeah, definitely General Motors is the one with the most product out there and probably the most investment. And I think that highlights how treacherous this is for auto companies. They made this investment based on the trajectory of policy in this country to some extent, and where the global auto industry is going. And it's kind of pulling the rug out from under them when the policy changes. Short term, I'm sure they'll sell here in the US a lot of ICE vehicles to people and they'll make a lot of money doing that. But I think, if you believe that the long-term trend for the industry globally is to electric vehicles, they're going to benefit now, but they may pay the price, years down the road.
All right. I appreciate your insights. Anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered the basis.